Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got the big tier list today for you from the Necrons Codex. We're going to be going through every single unit, sticking them in tier groups from D tier up to S tier, which is the best tier. Now we did do this last August, but a lot of things have changed since then. We've had a lot of different updates, especially in June. We've had the Pariah Nexus secondary card deck and all the missions are new as well. So there's a lot of changes to the meta. So we're going to be putting everything in tier groups. We're going to go through all the units in a brief bit of detail. This is of course just my opinion, guys. If you've got your own opinion, put it down in the comments down below. Have a conversation with yourselves and me, of course. And yeah, should we get straight into this tier list? This may be a long one, guys. I will be putting timestamps at the bottom as usual if you do want to skip ahead to the tiers. Right, D tier. This is not in any particular... Oh no, it is in order. It's in alphabetical order. So the alphabetical order for D tier, we are going to start this off with the Annihilation Barge. Now the Annihilation Barge, I'm not saying it's the worst unit in the Codex just because it begins with A. So it's the worst of... Well, it's not the worst of D tier, it's just one of the D tier options. It's pretty cheap. 115 points isn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong. The weapon isn't great. The ability is a bit meh. It's survivable-ish, but with changes to the Pariah Nexus deck, with actions in particular, secondaries like Cleanse, for example, which was a fixed option. Cleanse isn't now as doable as it was. Previously, you can get a really tanky vehicle, throw it into an objective, and as long as you've got the objective, you can do the action Cleanse. Big guns never tire, whether you're within engagement range or not, it didn't matter, and they could just do that for a few turns. For 115 points, it was quite good. Now we can't do actions within engagement range anymore, so that's why I believe the Annihilation Barge is even worse than it was before. And it wasn't that great before anyway, so I'm going to stick it here in D tier. Then we come on to the Cryptothrow. 60 points for 2 models, you put them within a unit that's got a Cryptek in there. They only move 5 inches, so they don't really keep up with the Technomancer and the Wraith that well, if you put them in that unit. And they basically provide a feel no pain save for your Cryptek. I mean, the Technomancer has a feel no pain save anyway, although it's a 5+, not a 4+. They do fight on death, but their weapons aren't exactly great. And if you're taking them solo on their own, well, 60 points for 2 on their own without the Cryptek, yeah, they've got a bit of OC1 per model, but you're paying 60 points for that. So they're probably slightly better because the Canoptic Scarab Swarms have now got 0 OC. And they can't do actions, rather. That's more what I meant to say. They've got 0 OC. They had 0 OC anyway, but they can't do actions anymore. So the Cryptothrows can be an action hero. Still a D tier for me. When they were 40 points, they were sort of reasonable, especially when the Necron Warriors were good. Back in the day when the Index came out, when Reanimation was really strong for Warriors. And then the Codex came out, and then, yeah, the Warrior ability kind of stunk. But no, Cryptothrows at the moment, not a fan of them, D tier. Next is the Obelisk, something I am a fan of, but unfortunately not so much at this moment in time. The weapons have massively been changed since was it the Index or was it 9th edition when they were pretty good at the end? They're still pretty trash, I'm not going to lie. Their abilities are situational. You can slow down enemy units, and if they've got fly, they take mortal wounds for every type of movement. That's all cool, but a lot of factions don't necessarily have fly, and not all units have fly, so it's not going to necessarily work. For the same sort of points, you can be taking, like, well, a Catan is less. In fact, a Catan is less. I mean, the Monolith is 50 points more, but you're getting so much more with the Necron's Monolith. You've got the Eternity Gate coming out, the weapons on top. Not going to talk too much about the Monolith right now, because it's not the place for the Monolith. But the Obelisk, yeah, 325 points, and it doesn't really do much. Quite tough, 2+ armor, 24 wounds, toughness 13. Yep, that's all gravy, but just take a Monolith, it's easier. Next, another one of my favourites, it's the Ghost Arcs. It's the Ghost Arcs. They don't have a use at the moment, they really don't. I was in the process of doing a Necron's Ghost Arc spam list before the Pariah Nexus deck came out, and I was going to use the Ghost Arcs to cleanse, and I had, I think it was 5, or it might have been, it was either 5 or 6 Ghost Arcs in this list. And there was Hexmarks, Illuminazares, and Royal Wardens were just bombing around with the Ghost Arcs with the Hypercrypt. So it kind of worked. And yeah, the Ghost Arcs were just going to cleanse. But you can't cleanse within engagement range anymore, so therefore they're just going to get tagged, and that makes them redundant for me. The repair barge ability it's not great because not many people are taking warriors still, even though they're a battle line unit. And yeah, the transport capacity also sucks. 10 warriors and an infantry model, or an infantry model. No one takes warriors in 10s if they even take warriors. You're taking them in 20s or nothing. So, Ghost Arts for me, unfortunately, at this moment in time, they're a dud. Another dud is one of the Cryptex, a Psychomancer. Still hasn't really made any progress since its launch, really. It's still at the dead part of the shelf. Dust is gathering on these models if you even bothered to get one. I didn't. I just proxied them every time I use these. But yeah, abilities, I don't like. I'm not a fan of the Nightmare Shroud ability. You've got to get within 6 inches. And the Harbinger of Despair ability, okay, it's 18 inches. It's not that bad, but it's only affecting battle shocks. A lot of things don't really suffer from battle shock too much. They roll it and it's fine, or you can even gain buffs and bonuses from the mission rules nowadays. So I don't really like it. It's not a Necrons thing, I don't believe. If we're playing Tyranids and it all stacks up, great. They've got loads of ways to minus to the battle shock, but we don't. So for me, Psychomancer is a dud. I mean, it's 4 up armor save, toughness 4, no invuln save anyway. And you're not going to waste that cryptic spot with your immortals, are you? You're really not. Another dud at this moment. Then the final unit within this list is, well, in this D tier, is Trazyn the Infinite. Trazyn the Infinite, I did have high hopes for Trazyn the Infinite with the Ancient Collector ability, with the sticky objectives effectively. Unfortunately, it happens at the end of the command phase, and if you're playing the Hypercrypt Legion, which I do, then you're going to be hyper-phasing units on in your movement phase. So you've missed the command phase, so that would have been a really cool thing if this ability was sort of the end of the movement phase or something. That would be really cool, but it's not. So you can't kind of do both. You've got to foot slog your way around the board, unless you've used like a Cryptek with a Veil of Darkness or something, but even then you're only going to get a couple at that point. If you're hyper-phasing him, you can still do it, but it's going to take you longer to do it. So you're only going to sticky a few objectives. It's just not worth taking that Overlord spot within a unit, whether it's your Lich Guards, Immortals again, or whatever. And the Surrogate Host ability, I don't like it. I mean, I think every character we've got is probably better than Trazyn the Infinite, or any that you've actually put on the battlefield. You're not going to be taking, like I said, a Psychomancer anyway. That's probably the only one that I'd replace. Everything else is better. Hexmark Destroyers are better. Overlords are better. Who are you going to actually replace with Trazyn the Infinite? And in fact, you can't even use the Scorpet Lord. Not that I would anyway. So yeah, another dud at this moment. Trazyn the Infinite. Right, on to the C tier then. We're starting this off with the Catacomb Command Barge. Now, the Command Barge, another model I used to really like. 130 points. It's slightly cheaper than it used to be. Adds 1 OC to nearby units within 6, which is okay. Really does help those Canoptic Scarab Swarms that are now half useless, if you like, in terms of actions and things like that. But alongside a Command Barge, they get the OC. But then if you're paying 130 points plus the 40 points for the Scarabs, what's the point, right? There's no point. They are quite resilient though with the Advanced Quantum Shielding. They've got the 4+ Invulnerable Save, Toughness 8, 9 wounds. Dish out a fair amount of damage with the Overlord's Blade, nothing too crazy. And the Resurrection Orb is handy. It's handy, but 130 points handy? I don't think so. It's not for me at this moment, but it's definitely not D tier. It's not down there. It's not down in the depths, but it's not something I really use that often. Moving into the next unit, which is the Canoptic Spiders. The luxury pick is what I've always called them, and they still are. They still are a luxury item. They don't really get to fit into lists. Once you've got your battle line units, once you've got your Catan or your Wraiths, your scoring units like your Hex Marks and things like that, and obviously your characters, where do you find space for your spiders? And don't forget, you also need some heavy hitters as well, such as your Locust Destroyers or your Doomsday Arcs, for example. So where are you finding space for Canoptic Spiders? Unless you're playing a really Canoptic heavy list in the Canoptic Court, and you're going with loads of Scarabs maybe, then yeah, that it could be a thing, but I don't think it's a very common thing. It's not a very competitive thing. I mean, they bring back Scarabs in the command phase. That's alongside Reanimation Protocols, which is kind of cool. And if you've got 2 in the unit, you'll be bringing back 2 and then Reanimation Protocols as well, which, yeah, it's cool. They provide a Feel No Pain save, which is also workable when you've got like the Silent King and other vehicles alongside him. But I just don't find space for them. I mean, if they had an ability where the spiders increase the OC of the scarabs by 1, that would be kind of cool. That would be kind of cool and it would make more sense. Then again, the spiders could probably just do the action. I don't know, but then they're not going to be shooting with their double particle beamers. So, I don't know, they are good, they're okay, but they're not really selected by many people at this moment in time, and definitely not me. So yeah, into C tier at this moment. We come on to the fortification next, the conversions of Dominion. This is, since the Codex, it's seen changes because you can now buy them individually, or pay for them individually, 60 points per model, whereas before I think you had to buy them in a whole block of 3, and they had to be not quite unit coherency, but within 12 of one another, wholly. Whereas now you can buy 3 individual ones, completely separate them if you want. If you really want, you could buy 9 models, right? 3 lots of 3, which is, no one's doing that. Now the abilities, they're a bit meh. You get a 6+ feel, no pain save, whatever, right? The benefits of cover, that's terrain for you anyway, you don't really need that. And there's a few other bits and bobs for the normal fortification rules, but the reason why you would take these is for your it's like a defense, an anti-deep strike kind of unit. You could do it with scarabs for 40 points, which is only 20 points less, by the way. But with this unit, you get toughness 9 with a 3-up save and 7 wounds per model. So if you put 1 in each quarter in your deployment zone, that's going to have a nice 9-inch restriction for deep strike and things like that. The scarabs do that, don't get me wrong, but the scarabs can at least move, maybe action if they're near a Tetramancer or a barge, but the scarabs are squishier. So they are an option. I just don't think they're as useful as an option, and I don't think your opponent is going to fire at them, not going to target them. Why would you? They're not really a threat. They do have the transdimensional abductor range attacks, 3 shots, and they are damage 3, which isn't the worst, to be honest with you. They're not, when you look at it that way, when you're buying the weapon as well, that's not actually bad, but I'm just not seeing them, and I'm not playing them. So that's why they're in C, but they're not a D. They're not that bad. They're just not as used. Onto one of the aircraft, it's the Doom Scythe. The Doom Scythe has got the big heavy death ray. That's the reason you take this thing. Strength 16 with 3 shots. Sustained hits D3 on top of that. -4 AP, D6 plus 1 damage. It's a big hitter, and you can get critical hits on a 5+ with the ability, as long as that the enemy unit stands firm, rather than knocks for cover. And yeah, everything is cool, it moves fast. Of course, you've got the movement restrictions with aircraft. Toughness 9 is reasonable, 12 wounds, 3+ armor save. It is 230 points, however, that is quite a lot of points. When you're getting close to Catan territory at this point, what do you need to pay for a Catan Knight? Well, the cheapest one, the Deceiver, is not far off that, is it? But maybe 60 points will get you a Void Dragon. Also, if you pay 30 points less, you can get yourself a Doomsday Arc, which is actually strength 18 with D6 plus 1 with Blast. So I think I know what I prefer. I prefer the Doomsday Arc over the Doom Scythe. It does have the Twin Tesla Destructor, but I think that's trash, to be honest with you. It doesn't do a lot. And yeah, OC 0, can't hold primaries, can't do secondaries. That's why it shouldn't be 230. Yes, you've got benefits with looking over terrain and stuff because you're an aircraft, but other than that, not for me. But I don't think it's bad. 230. Aircrafts can't be charged unless you've got fly. That's a good bit of defense. And as I said, you can shoot over terrain and stuff because you're an aircraft. So that's why it's got its price bracket at 230. I think we should see it at sort of 200 to make this a little bit better. But yeah, that's a C tier for me, Doom Scythe. Right, let's edit this in because we've got the Ophidian Destroyers. The Ophidian Destroyers, I believe, are C tier. I would have put them in sort of A tier, maybe even S tier back then, because we didn't have this is when the index was there. We didn't have the Hypercrypt Legion back then. As soon as the Hypercrypt Legion came, yeah, the usage of the Ophidian Destroyers, for me personally, wasn't needed. The whole thing with the tunneling horrors being able to pop out and pop in, well, Hypercrypt basically does that with all units. We don't need it. We've also got the Veil of Darkness in the Awakened Dynasty. Night Scythes are maybe making a comeback, so you can drop units off. Yeah, they're not as good. They're sort of Glass Hammer as well in terms of their defense. They're only toughness 5 with a 4-up save. No invulnerable save. They don't hit anywhere near as hard as the Squabble Destroyers. They're only strength 4. Yes, you can unlock devastating moves with the Plasma Sight, but Really, they're there for the deep strike and they're there for the scoring capability if you're not using Hypercrypt Legion. And even then, you could just bypass them and go to Tomb Blades, Hexmark Destroyers, and so on. So that's why they're only in C tier for me. Triumph Praetorians are in this tier as well, 120 points for 5, and you've got the options with the weapons. They've also got Deep Strike, which is probably the main focus with the data card, and they can reroll their charge move, which is kind of cool, and fall back as well. Now, lack of invulnerable save makes them a bit 2 wounds apiece makes them a little bit and yeah, there's only really 2 detachments that are going to work with the Triumph Praetorians. It's either the Hypercrypt Legion, but you've got better options for Deep Strike. You've got Hexmark Destroyers, Death Marks as an example, or you're going to go with the Obeisance Phalanx because they've got the Triumph keyword, so they're going to have a bit more interaction with the +1 to the wound roll and some of the stratagems. The Obeisance Phalanx isn't the most used, I believe, at this moment in time. It's between the Awakened Dynasty and the Hypercrypt Legion. The Canoptic Corp probably was the go-to before this Pariah Nexus deck, but changes to the points cost of the Canoptic units like the Doomstalker and the Wraiths, and the way we're dealing with cleanse and things, I think they've gone a bit downhill. So I think you're going to see more Awakened Dynasty and more Hypercrypt Legion. The Obeisance Phalanx and the Annihilation Legion, not so much, and this unit kind of relates to the Obeisance Phalanx in my opinion. They don't do much, they're quick though, 10-inch movement, they are quick, devastating wounds on the particle casters if you took the casters, but I think you're probably better off with the Rod of Covenant. Yeah, Scorpec Destroyers are probably the better option if you're looking at melee output, especially the fact that you can take a leader in there with the Scorpec Lord, so then you can go into the Awakened Dynasty if you want as well, or the Annihilation Legion in fact. So there's a lot more options with the competition with other units. And then finally, another Triarch unit within this tier group is the Triarch Stalker. Triarch Stalker, 125 points, reasonably cheap. Options with the weapons pre-game, cool. Melee isn't that great with only 4 attacks. And removing cover is okay. It's okay. I prefer what it used to have, where it used to give everybody rerolls of hit rolls over 1. That used to be good. I think Scout 8-inch is a decent ability, gets you onto those objectives early. And maybe that's the reason why it's not lower. Maybe this is sort of the top of C tier because of Scout 8-inch. Big guns never tire within engagement range. Well, yeah, we've already kind of mentioned it a few times. When you're doing your actions, you can't do it now within engagement range. So that kind of makes the vehicle side of the Necrons Codex a little bit less useful. And in terms of the shooty side of this data card, well, yeah, the heat ray is good, but it's only strength 9. So going up against the big stuff, it's not strong enough. The particle shredder, it's okay with dead wounds, but that's really against Horde because it's got no AP there. And the heavy Gauss cannon array, it's okay. It's okay. With your 6 shots, strength 8 -2, 2 damage. It's a marine killer, that one. That one is okay, but when you're paying 125 points for that, I think it's a little bit subpar. So that's why it's in C for me. Right, let's get into the B tier then. So the sort of the average to slightly above average tier group. And yeah, B tier. Starting us off with the Tarnchild of the Deceiver. Now, the Deceiver on its own as a standalone model, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It could even argue it's S tier. But because of the fact that we've got the Nightbringer, the Void Dragon, the Transcendent Catan, you're not selecting the Deceiver over those 95% of the time. You're really not. Now, the Deceiver has a lot of decent tricks. It's got Stealth, which the others don't have. It's got OC6, which the others don't have, which that could be a really big factor in your objective holding. It's also got all the standard stuff, the 5+ Fear No Pain Save, the halving damage ability. But it has been nerfed because of the way the modified damage happens. So if you've got a Melter that's got Melter D6 + 2, you half the D6 and then you add the 2. You don't D6 + 2, then half it. So they're always going to get at least 3, which that kind of hurts things like the Catan. The Cosmic Insanity range weapon is pretty good against characters. Strength 6 -2, 1 damage. That's decent. And in melee with the Golden Fists, not bad. I'd say it's okay. Hitting on 2s with 8 attacks. Strength 8 -3, 3 damage. That's okay. The Grand Illusion ability, you've got some good tricks with that. You're moving up to 3 units within your within your deployment, basically. You're moving them out, moving them around. You could even move them into strategic reserves, which would bypass the restriction of 25%, and then maybe you want to like rapid ingress something later on. So there's little tricks you can do with that. But yeah, overall, it's a decent unit. It's just that there's better options. There's a lot of competition for Catan, and the Transcendent Catan in particular, because it's not an epic hero, you can get 3 of them. So you've got at least 3 models that are better than the Deceiver, then the Void Dragon makes 4, the Nightbringer makes 5. So you've got 5 better Catan options before you get to the Deceiver. And we're not talking about the Vault, obviously. We're talking about the characters. So that is the first one in this tier group. Next on the B tier, we've got Flayed Ones. Now, Flayed Ones, I don't use them often, but I know the reason why you would use them. It's the Infiltrator's ability. Infiltrators is sometimes massive. It's sometimes massive. You can pop them into the center of the board, and it will prevent your opponent from getting anywhere within 9 inches with their Infiltrator units, or their Scout units, in fact, as well. So it could be a real handy tool to defend against those kind of abilities. They've got stealth as well. I mean, their flesh hunger ability is a little bit stinky. I'm not that bothered about it. Yeah, below half strength, you get critical hit rolls with all the hits. So you get sustained hits on every hit roll that hits. But if they're below half strength, you're probably going to murder them anyway. But yeah, other than that, I mean, they're cheap. 60 points for Infiltrators is good. Would I rather take Death Marks? That's where the competition is for me personally. I know it's a complete different ability. Deep Strike and Infiltrators is very different. But because I played the Hypercrypt Legion, I would take the Death Marks over the Flayed Ones. So I also play Canoptic Wraiths, which are fast, which should get to the objective turn 1 anyway. So that's why I leave behind Flayed Ones more often than not. But if you're playing other detachments or not using Wraiths and you're just using other things, Flayed Ones are good. So yeah, Flayed Ones in B tier. Next we've got the main boy, the main character, Imhotep the Stormlord. He started off with the Codex pretty strong because CP was pretty good, and he then became stronger because the Overlords got nerfed when it was only battle tactic stratagems that they could use with their My Will Be Done. That has since changed since the new update, and it's now My Will Be Done is just a -1 CP for any stratagem for the unit, which that in effect makes Imhotep's ability slightly dampened because he gives you more CP. Now, of course, more CP is good no matter what, right? It doesn't just have to be about the Overlords. What you also need to remember is he takes the position of an Overlord in a unit, whether it's the Immortals, Lich Guard, or Warriors. Imhotep the Stormlord is taking the position of the Overlord, who's going to give you that My Will Be Done ability, as well as the Resurrection Orb, and so on. So I think that's why he's down into B tier. Other than that, he's pretty good. I mean, 100 points, yeah, that's okay-ish. You can throw out Mortal Wounds with the Lord of Storm ability once per battle. His range and melee attacks are decent enough for a character model within the Necrons faction. 2+4+ save as well with 6 wounds. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with this datasheet at all. I just think there's better options with Overlords. Moving on to one of the battle line units, we've got the Necron Warriors. I used to really love Warriors in the Index when you just used to take hundreds of the guys and they were undefeatable. You couldn't beat them. Undefeatable. The weapons are kind of, I want to say, redundant unless you've got a Royal Warden in the unit, because once they get tagged, they're not shooting. You need a Royal Warden, which is another cost. So even though you're going to be taking, well, you take 20 first of all, 200 points plus the Royal Warden, that's 240 as a minimum, and that's before you've even put a Cryptic in there if you are going to. So that is a little bit of an issue in itself. The only thing you're really taking these guys for is the OC. OC2 with a group of 20 is great. You can flood the battlefield if you're playing that Horde style with your Silver Tide. If you're playing the Awakened Dynasty, they're going to get bumped up slightly if they get to shoot. Again, a Royal Warden will probably be the best option within that dynasty, within this unit. And the Numbers' Legion ability kind of stinks since the Index. They changed it from being D3+3 return models. It's just your standard D3 and you get to reroll it if you don't want it. It's not that great. And yeah, the Warriors used to really combine nicely with the Reanimators and the Resurrection Orbs, D3+3 each time. Protocol of Undying Legion stratagem, that used to all synergize really well. It's not a thing anymore. It doesn't work that way. Their ability kind of stinks. I think they're too expensive as well. 10 points a model. I think they should be down to around 8 points a model. When you combine their wounds and their toughness to units such as Wraiths or even Space Marine Intercessors and things, they're just not quite there. So I would like to see them at 8 points a model, or buff their ability back to how it used to be. At least give it D6. It doesn't have to be D3 plus 3, but D6 would be okay. But yeah, Ghost Flayers, Ghost Reapers, both are sort of meh kind of weapons. The Reaper's obviously the short range with a little bit of AP. The AP tends to go because of the cover save, so it's like, what's the point? Both have rapid fire. Both have lethal hits. One has rapid fire. I just take the Flayers if I do take Warriors, but I tend to not bother. Immortals are just way better. Onto the other aircraft, we've got the Night Scythe. We did a video quite recently about the Night Scythe. There's some new combinations because it gained Deep Strike with the new update, which gives you a lot of new combinations that you could do, especially with its abilities. So you can move or Deep Strike, throw out some Immortals, make all your shots, bang, 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 pick them up after, because of the ability Translocation Beams in the fight phase, which is a whole different phase, by the way. Some people were querying that you can't pop out and then pop back in the same turn. No, that's just the phase. Can't do it in the same phase. So if you're doing it with the Chronomancer, that's the shooting phase now. Or if you're doing it with the Translocation Beams, that's the fight phase. Whole different phase there. You can obviously do this turn 1 as well, because the Quantum Invader ability just gives you a little bit more defense. Again, if there's no flying enemy units nearby, they're not going to be charging. You're only going to be getting shot. You probably will get shot. There's no invulnerable save unless you're playing the Hypercrit Legion and you use the stratagem. But I think they've been bumped up to B tier now because there's a few more combinations that you can do that are quite filthy against certain lists. If you're going up against World Eaters, potentially, yeah, they bring out all their 8-bound and their Berserkers. None of them can charge the Night Scythe. You keep popping out with Immortals, bang, 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 jump back in. They can't charge it. There's only really a few units within that faction, like Forge Fiends, that can shoot it down. Unless there's a flying unit that I've forgotten about. Does Necron have fly? I can't remember. But all the little guys don't have fly. So yeah, Night Scythe in B for me. Next we've got another character, another Cryptek. This one is the epic hero, Oricon the Diviner. I was half tempted to put him down, to be honest with you, but the 4+ invulnerable save is still pretty good. Whether it's Immortals or Warriors, it's pretty good. I mean, Warriors is probably the best option here. I think that's the best combination, having Oricon the Diviner with a Royal Warden is probably the best synergy with Warriors in my opinion. Having a 4+ invulnerable save, then being able to fall back and shoot is good. Now he does Hulk up once per battle and he triples his amount of attacks and strength and all that stuff and gains devastating wounds on every wound roll, which is kind of cool. So he can take something out that's really important sort of once per battle. Definitely worth using it. As soon as he gets into engagement range, you may as well just use it, because if he dies you're never going to use it, right? In the Awakened Dynasty, he can pop back up with the stratagem Eternal Revenant. Yep, cool. But other than that, I would make use of it. As for like what he's doing, I mean, 4+ save, 4+ invulnerable save, 4 wounds. Not many wounds there, but that's just the Cryptex for you, isn't it? He's taking the spot of a Technomancer. He's taking the spot of a Plasmancer. He's taking the spot of a Chronomancer. I think all 3 are better. All 3 are better options in my opinion. The invulnerable save versus the Feel No Pain save is a really good debate, which I probably should do a future video on, because the Feel No Pain save is better. A Technomancer with a 5+ Feel No Pain save, in my opinion, is better than a 4+ invulnerable save. And you're probably thinking, well, a 4+ is better than a 5+. The difference is, though, is if you've got like a enemy unit firing at you with -2 AP, for example, and you get cover save, so it becomes a -1 AP, and it's on your warriors that have a 4+ armor save, so that will go to a 5+ armor save. You still get an armor save. You still get a 5+ armor save, then you get a 5+ Feel No Pain save. Whereas with an invulnerable save, it just replaces the armor save. So yes, you do get a 4+, but that is it. It just replaces it. Sometimes there might be no AP, and you might just be having a regular 4+ save. So the invulnerable save doesn't even come into effect. Whereas if you fail your save and you had a Technomancer, the Feel No Pain save does come into effect. So I think the Technomancer is always better. But if you play with loads of Wraiths, you're not going to have any space for Technomancers if you've already got 3. Next, we've got one of the Overlord models. It's the bog standard Overlord. I've separated these guys, you probably may have noticed. They've both been buffed since the update. So I'm sort of half tempted to put them both into the a level above. But one is still better than the other one in my opinion. They've both got the My Will Be Done ability to reduce CP cost by 1 for the unit. That's great. Resurrection Orb, nice. -1 to damage. Situational, simply because they're normally within a unit. Unless there's Precision or Epic Challenge and things like that. And the Tachyon Arrow, you never use it. It's kind of stinky. The Void Scythe is pretty good though. Strength 12, -3, 3 damage with Dev Wounds. That's pretty good. He's an overall leader. He works with the Obeisance Phalanx because he's got the Overlord ability, Overlord keyword. And of course the Awakened Dynasty is a +1 as well. Now the difference between this guy and the other Overlord with the Translocation Shroud is the other one has the Auto Advance 6 inches move, and you can do that through models and terrain. I think that's just better. I think it's worth having, and they're pretty much the same cost anyway. They're both 85 points. Why would you not take the Translocation Shrouded Overlord over the standard one? I don't know. Unless you've already got 3 and you're playing Overlord heavy, that's probably the only reason. Or unless you want the Tachyon Arrow and you're going with the Obeisance Phalanx and you're trying to re-roll your wound rolls and things like that, +1 to the wound roll. Yeah, I don't think you use it as often, but it's definitely not any worse than than this tier group. B tier. It can't be. Okay, onto the Royal Warden, another character. Takes the place of an Overlord model in a unit of Immortals or Warriors. It can still be paired with a Cryptek though. Basically gives you the fall back and charge, fall back and shoot ability. And a unit within 12 is no longer battle shock, which is quite cool. I always forget to use that, but that does come up every now and then, and yeah, it can save you and get you some points. All the range and melee stuff is a bit meh. I mean, the range attack is okay for what it does, but really it's purely about the fallback and shoot ability. He's only 40 points, which makes him an absolute steal. If you do take Ghost Arcs and you're looking for cheap infantry to put into the Ghost Arc, because you've got to have something in the Ghost Arc, and you don't want to put Warriors in there in 10s, you could put a Royal Warden in there, I suppose. You could probably put Hex Marks in there, they're probably better options. Illuminate Zarez as well. But 40 points, dirt cheap, whack him on the top of Warriors or Immortals if you got the space and there's no Overlord and so on in there. If not, you've got to leave him at home. And that's kind of why he's here. Some people would class this as an S tier. Some people would say no, he just does nothing. So it's very dependent on your playstyle. For me, he's just B. Then we come on to the big spider, the Seraptic Heavy Construct, the big Forge World, the only Forge World we've got still in our existence for the Necrons, because everything else got put to Legends. Ouch, GW, you dropped a clanger there. And 540 points is very expensive, but it does everything. It does everything. It moves fast, it's tough, it's got the invar, it's got loads of wounds, it's got the abilities where you're causing battle shock, you're going over terrain. Loads of range weapons that loads of range shots rather. You've got the 2 different options or 2 different loadouts. I think the standard loadout with the Singularity Generators is probably the best option with 2d6 strength 10 shots with blast and dead wounds. I think that's pretty cool. Damage 4 each. And then you've also got the Forelimbs as well, the Titanic Forelimbs with the Strike and Sweep. Strike and Sweep profiles are massive. Massive this edition. Yeah, 540 points though. Some people again would class this as an A tier. I think at the start of the edition I put this as sort of up there with maybe even S tier. I can't remember where I put it now. But I don't use it as often. Maybe it's just me because I don't run it as often. But you'll have to let me know what you think, guys, because this one's I'm a little bit not sure on this one. Then we come on to the Scorpet Destroyers. The Scorpet Destroyers are nice. They're nice. They hit hard. And they reroll 1s on the charge, which is good. They've got devastating moves with plasma sights. They're toughness 6 nowadays. And yeah, strength 7, -2, 2 damage. You've just got to get in mind, I think most people have now, but in 9th edition, they were sort of vehicle killers almost. They're not that anymore, and I think people have worked that out. They're now like infantry killers and so on. You put a Scorpet Lord in the unit to get lethal hits. You rapid ingress them. They're infantry, they can walk through ruins. In fact, something I've noticed, guys, with these new terrain maps, is it me or is there like a lot more terrain now? There's a lot more terrain, which I feel like it's benefiting melee units more in this Pariah Nexus update. So the Scorpet Destroyers being quite quick and being melee and infantry could be quite good. So at the moment I'm sticking them in B. There is a potential for them to move up. It depends on how GTs go, but there is a potential for them to go to A. And then the last unit within this tier group is the Scorpet Lord, their leader. Can't really separate them too much. I mean, I would put the Scorpet Lord above because he can run solo, and if you put him in the Awakened Dynasty, you can give him the Feel No Pain save of a 4+, which I did in my last game, and it worked a treat. In fact, it was pretty good. And even if he dies, Protocol of Eternal Revenant, bring him back up again. He causes mortal wounds on the charge, he provides lethal hits for the unit. He hits pretty hard in melee with strength 10, -3 damage, so he's a decent option if you are taking Scorpion Destroyers or if you want to run him solo in the Awakened Dynasty. So that is all of the B tier, I believe. Let's move into A tier. First one in the A tier, this is a big tier group in fact. We've got the Canoptic Doomstalker, arguably S tier. If you're playing the Canoptic Court, probably an S tier. He's gone up 10 points to 145. Still pretty cheap for what it can do with the strength 14 damage 3 weapon. And again, Canoptic Court, you're re-rolling everything in your deployment zone. And if you move out the deployment zone, you're still re-rolling ones. Unless you've got the Power Matrix on, then you're still re-rolling everything. Overwatch is on a 5+, which is always handy. And fairly resilient, only toughness 8, but 4+ invulnerable save with 12 wounds. 145 points, you can't ask for much more. I think it's a solid option. Again, some people would say S tier. I'm going with A tier. I'm not much of a Canoptic Court player. I would rather just take like Doomsday Arcs and things. Speaking of Canoptic units, I got with the Reanimator. Now the Reanimator, another previous video we did, we were speaking about action heroes. So if you missed that, go check that one out. A lot of things have changed with actions now, and I was speaking about some of the units that could become our action monkeys within our faction. Reanimators, I believe, are that one. I believe they can do the actions now. 75 points is cheap. It is still cheap. It's Hexmark Destroyer kind of level. It's Deathmarks kind of level. I mean, Deathmarks are a bit cheaper. But it's around about that category. It's got a Feel No Pain of a 4+. It's got Toughness 6. It's got 6 wounds. And it's got double reanimation at all times because of its aura. And provides that reanimation with others. But the 4+ Feel No Pain save is big. It's a vehicle, so if you're playing the Hypercrypt Legion, you can put that 4+ invulnerable save on it, which is also good. It's not doing much at range, it's not doing much in melee, so it may as well do the actions while it's doing its Nanoscale Reanimation Beam around him. Very helpful when you're going up with a Catan. If you charge a Nightbringer into an objective filled with a load of enemy units, and the Reanimator follows by, stays within 3, double reanimation for the Nightbringer, you can still do the action. Nightbringer's sweeping away whatever's there. It's a nice little combination. Or maybe it's at the back with your 3 Canoptic Doomstalkers or your Locust Destroyers, Locust Heavy Destroyers even, Doomsday Arcs and so on. I think it's now solid. I used to really piss on this thing, and now it's made a comeback because actions have changed. Like I said already in the intro, the Scarabs have changed, the way the pistols are with Race have changed, vehicles and monsters within engagement range have changed, so we need other units that can do this stuff. Next we've got the Catans. We've got the Nightbringer first. We did a video on that recently. I put him as my number 3. Used to be my number 1 Catan, it's now my number 3. Amazing weaponry. Gaze of Death is pretty epic, normally does some work. In melee, absolutely devastating, probably one of the best in the game. He's absolutely incredible for what he does in melee. But it's not just what he does in melee, it's his defense as well. The 5+ Feel No Pain save, the halving damage thing again, the 4+ invulnerable save, toughness 11, which is hard work to get through. You need to put your big stuff onto the Catan or a million little guns because it ain't gonna happen when you're halving damage and 4+ invulnerable save and 5+ Feel No Pain save. It's just hard to get rid of Catan, especially this edition. In the last edition when you had the psychic phase, you used to smite him, shoot him for 3, charge him for 3, and then it was dead because it only had 9 wounds back then. They're solid now. End of the fight phase, you're throwing out mortal wounds on top. 295 points is quite expensive. I wouldn't put it as an S tier simply because of the speed. Movement of 6 inches is quite difficult to maneuver. You might kill 1, maybe 2 things in a game. You've probably got to rapid ingress, and you're going to be doing it from a table edge because he's not got deep strike. You can't cosmic precision him anymore. I wasn't doing that anyway. You can't charge after that. So for me, it wasn't a thing. For some people, it was. But charging from a table edge or using rapid ingress from a table edge, I think is the way to go, just to eliminate that slowness of 6 inches. But even once he's in and he's fought, you're then there. You've got to get onto another enemy unit. Also a great deterrent, I suppose, if you've got a really key objective in maybe it's the center objective, maybe it's your home objective, and your opponent has to get it, whether it's because of the secret mission, whether it's because of the primary mission. If you just stick the Nightbringer there, bring it. You know what I mean? Bring it. A tier for me, not quite S tier. On a similar level, the Void Dragon, who is actually my number 1 Catan at the moment. Yeah, I've been using him a lot lately. He's just good. He's just good. great against vehicles, but that's just an extra bonus. The vehicle thing is just an extra bonus. You've got to kind of put that aside and don't just select him because of vehicles. He hits almost as hard as a Nightbringer. The stats are slightly less. You've got strength 12 instead of strength 14. With the sweep, you're only strength 8. You've got the extra attacks though. You've got extra attacks with the Canoptic Tailblades, which add a little bit more. You can heal with the Matter Absorption ability. At range is pretty deadly as well. With the Spear the Void Dragon, if that gets a vehicle, bang, that's doing some work. And the Voltax Storm against most things is nice. Has all the same durability as the Nightbringer, Feel No Pain, Invuln, halving damage, all that stuff comes into effect. 5 points cheaper than the Nightbringer as well, don't forget. Slightly bigger base, which I think is a bonus. Now, if you're bringing him in from the Table Edge or Rapid Ingress, sometimes it's a bit of a nerf to you because your base is bigger. But if you go killing a unit and you destroy a unit with a Void Dragon, and the other unit is 180, it's the other way, you don't have to go as far because the base is so much bigger. The Nightbringer has to make up a couple of inches more just to get there. So the Void Dragon, having a bigger base means 360 has a little bit more scope, and almost like it's a bit more movement, even though it isn't a bit more movement, if that makes any sense. So yeah, the Void Dragon's also in A tier. Next we've got Death Marks. Death Marks are cheap, 60 point for 5. Cheap. Are you bringing them for precision? You're really not. You're not bringing them for precision. Everyone's sort of blindsided by the fact that they've got precision. That's why you bring them. It's not for precision. You're bringing them for Deep Strike. Deep Strike is 60 points for 5 models with Deep Strike with OC1. If you're trying to establish Locus and get behind enemy lines, or maybe you've even chosen them as fixed options, perfect. Hex Monks I think are better. Hex Monk Destroyers I think are slightly better because they're lone op. But if you're struggling on points, go a little bit cheaper. Go for the Death Marks. They still got Deep Strike, even if they just do it for 1 turn, and they do establish Locus for 4 points and get behind enemy lines for another 3 points on their own. That's good. If you're playing the Hypercrypt, you can pick them up again in your opponent's turn and keep them back in safety. They can also do the ability, the Hyperspace Hunters. I don't really use it because I'm normally Deep Striking anyway, and things don't really tend to set units up in where I've set them up, if that makes sense. As for using them for precision, if you were to do that, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but in order to kill a captain, you're going to need at least a few turns, and you need a big unit of them, which people are taking in 5s. If you're going after a smaller character that's got no invulnerable save, like an Apothecary, like one of our, like a Plasmancer, for example, yeah, you might get lucky and do it within a turn. You might. There's not as many of those in the game. Normally it's the big and bad characters, the Grazgals and the captains, overlords and things like that. You don't see many of these smaller characters, or not in my meta anyway, not in my games. Maybe you do, and if you do, then maybe you are using them for the precision ability. But I think that they've got such a good Deep Striking option. Their footprint is only small because it's only 5 models on 32mm bases as well. Deep Strike them. Doomsday Arc is next. I was half tempted to put this into S tier, but I didn't, because you've got options. The Canoptic Doomstalker is one of them. Locust Heavies are another one. I've started to use these quite a lot lately, Doomsday Arcs. And yeah, 72 inches of range. You can put them at the very back. D6+1 with Blast and Heavy. Strength 18 and 4 damage. And if you don't move, you're going to get heavy and you're going to get dead wounds. Ideally, you just stay still. Now, the reason why they're not in the S tier is because, like I said earlier, the terrain in this Pariah Nexus mission pack, the terrain layout seemed to be a bit more condensed, a bit more heavy. So finding good firing lanes is quite difficult. You can't shoot through ruins and so on, so it's not that easy to find your desired target. You can still move, of course you can still move, but that doesn't prevent things from being untargetable if they're not within line of sight. As for everything else, toughness 9, 4+ invuln, 14 wounds, all of that is great. OC5 is also a little bit underrated as well. OC5 is good. And don't forget, the Gauss Flare Arrays are very good to chip off wounds against anything, and if there's a little stuff like the Termagants and things nearby, get rid of them. Just use your Flare Arrays, get rid of them. So yeah, that's an A tier for me. 200 points I think is a good price. I think is a decent points value. Anything more, then yeah, you'd probably consider 3 Doomstalkers over taking a couple of these. A tier for me. This one I think is slightly controversial because I've seen in a lot of winning or decent placed GTs with Necron players, Illuminazaris seems to be in quite a lot of the lists. I've used him in my last game, does well, he does reasonably well. 4 plus feel no pain save is great, and low knock within 3 inches is fantastic, alongside a 4 plus invuln and a 2 plus armor. Toughness 8 as well. He's got a very good amount of durability, a really strong amount of durability, not quite like a Catan, but you're only paying 175 points. You're not paying Catan points, so you can't expect halving damage and things. So he's like a mini Catan in a way. Decent at range with 3 damage, decent in melee with 3 damage, extra attacks with the impaling legs, decent. Helps battle line units if you're taking immortals, I mean warriors as well, but really it's about the immortals. I think he's especially good in the Awakened Dynasty because you can bring him back with the Eternal Revenant stratagem. So you're going to give him an extra 5 wounds when he returns because you round up. Half a 9 is 4.5, rounding up to 5. So that is definitely a great stratagem to use on Illuminazaris. Probably why he gets taken, I'd imagine. But yeah, a good all-rounder. Pretty quick as well. 8 inches of movement, and OC3 is reasonable. So yeah, I'm going to stick him here. I think some people will go a bit further than this and put him in S. But yeah, for me, A. Lichguard, the Forgotten Lichguard. They may be making a comeback because Wraiths have got slightly more expensive. Lichguard, a decent when you've got a Noble in the unit. So if you stick an Overlord in there, you stick Imhotep in there, or Trazyn the Infinite if you really want. Then they get -1 to the wound roll if they're getting attacked, which is good. Nobody's really taking them with the War Scythes because you don't get the Invulnerable save and you can't take a Technomancer with this unit. In fact, you can't take any Cryptek with the unit. That's why they went downhill. We used to take them with the Technomancer. Can't do that anymore. So we've got to go with the Hyperphase Swords and the Dispersion Shields so that you get the Invuln save. Otherwise, there's just no point. You might as well take Triarch Praetorians because that's the same sort of stuff, but they're quicker. So that means you're only really looking at the Hyperphase Swords, which are Strength 6, -2, and 1 damage. Not great, so you're not really even looking at the offense here. You're looking at the defense. Put them on an objective for 85 points. Bunker down, 4 plus invuln, -1 to wound. That's probably what you do. Overlord's probably got the Resurrection Orb in there. That's what you do. They're not going to go far. Yeah, A tier. I'd say maybe even the bottom of A tier. Not near the top. On to one of the big boys. It's the Monolith. Necron's Monolith 375, a little bit more than the Obelisk, of course, by 50 points. But you get a lot more for it. For your 50 points, you get a lot. You've got a few less wounds, I believe. It's 22 wounds, isn't it? 2 plus armor save. You get the 4 death rays, which are big. Strength 12 weapons with sustained hits D3. With your 4 shots, that is. So maybe you get one of those to be sustained, and then you've got D3 more. Maybe you end up with like 5 shots on average or something. Strength 12 -4 D6 plus 1 damage is nice. You're not really taking the Ghost Flux arcs. You do not need anti-infantry weapons with a 375 point model, so don't even look at them. But then you've got the Particle Whip, which is also decent. 3d6 with Blast, Strength 8 -1 AP, 2 damage. That is actually such an underrated weapon. 3d6 is decent. What's the average of that? Like 10 or 11 shots with Blast on top. Maybe you're looking at 13 or 14. Strength 8 means you're going to be, well, you need to hit first, of course. Hitting on 3s, wounded on probably 2s, if not 3s, and yeah, 2 damage a pop. Nice. But why do you take a Monolith? You take a Monolith because of the Eternity Gate. You can be picking up infantry models from the battlefield and then pop them out. They can be within reserves, they can be on the battlefield, pop them out wholly within 6 inches. Doesn't matter where they are. So you're doing a lot of movement here. And don't forget, the Monolith has Deep Strike, so you can pop the Deep Strike in, pop some models out. They won't be able to charge, so you're not really going to be doing it with the Scorpet Destroyers or the Lich Guard or even the Wraiths because of the Technomancer keyword with the infantry keyword. But the shooty stuff, Warriors, Immortals, probably are ideal, or just moving things around. Maybe you do want to use Lich Guard, you just want to move the units around. Decent. There's a lot of stratagems within the Hypercrypt Legion in particular. I think there's 4 stratagems that relate to the Monolith. One of them is the Invulnerable Save, which is key. But other ones relate to charging out of the Eternity Gate, or as soon as you lose a model in your opponent's turn, you can use the Eternity Gate, and so on. So it's a real good way of moving things around, which is what the Hypercrypt is all about. But even without the Hypercrypt Legion, I still think it's solid for moving things around. And yeah, you've got the damage output with the Death Rays as well. I tend to not use it because I come up against Chaos Demons quite a lot, and those Bloodthirsters will just take this out in one. So there's no point for me using it, but I've seen this in action. I know its capabilities. Still a few more left. We've got the Overlord, this time with the Translocation Shroud. I put this one above the standard Overlord in terms of tier groups because of the Translocation Shroud ability. So instead of getting the -1 to damage ability, you're getting the auto advances of 6 inches, and you can go through terrain or models. So that's pretty good for your Tesla Immortals in particular that have got Assault. So you can move your 5. You can also advance the 6, so now you're moving 11. You can shoot with your Tesla. If you've got a Chronomancer in the unit, you can move a further 5 inches, which will be a normal move, and normal moves can still go through terrain and so on because of the Translocation Shroud ability. He's still got everything else that the standard Overlord has. The Resurrection Orb, Maya will be done for the CP reduction of price, and the Overlord's Blade. So he doesn't actually have some of the weapon, in fact he has only the Overlord's Blade. There's no weapon options, there's no Tacky and Arrow, and there's obviously no Void Scythe either. But I think the Overlord's Blade is good enough, and I would take this over the standard Overlord any day of the week. So it just depends. If you want an Overlord in your unit, this is probably the go-to. If you're playing the Abasis Phalanx, even better. +1 to wound and all that jazz. Right, this one's another one that's going to shake things up. The Tesseract Bolts. The last time I did the Vault, I think I put this in D tier. I think I put this at the bottom of the pack. It was not for me. I've since been looking at it and looking at it and looking at it and going, you know what? In terms of damage, it does a lot. We did a video on this quite a while ago now. I went through all the weapons and what it does, and it makes its points back with the right targets. Now, it has since been buffed in the new updates because as long as the model's base can fit through a gap, the whole model can fit through a gap. So if there's a couple of ruins that are like this far apart, but the base can go through, then the whole model can go through, providing that it ends its movement in space. Previously, that wasn't a thing. You couldn't fit, because this thing is massive, it's humongous. It wasn't moving anywhere, so it had to pretty much stay where it was in the deployment. If you got lucky, you were hyperphasing it, but realistically, it wasn't moving. But now it has the option or the ability to be able to move through these ruins and other features and get into a better firing lane to be able to use the Antimatter Meteor and the Times Arrow in particular. So you're getting 2 of these Catan powers, and these Catan powers are brutal. I mean, the Antimatter Meteor, it's got Blast, Dead Wounds, Indirect Firepower, D6 +3 shot, Strength 10, -3 damage. Nasty. Cosmic Fire, that's more of your anti-infantry kind of weapon. Again, Dead Wounds, it's a torrent, 3d6. The one I like is the Times Arrow. I think that one's incredible. Anti-character 4+. It doesn't matter what the toughness is. On a 4+, it's going to become a critical wound, which will become a devastating wound. It's got precision as well, don't forget. And it's 6 damage. It's just a flat 6 damage. So if you're shooting up against, I don't know, an Overlord or a Captain, that's an easier way of saying it. If you're going up against a Captain and you roll a 4 to wound, 6 damage, straight. No win-1 save. No win-1 save because it's a dev wound. Unless they've got a Funo Pain save on there, that's just going to go 6 damage. And I don't know how many wounds Captains have. I think it's 6. Yeah. Flat kills them. Nice. It's got Titanic, it's got Fly, it's got Towering and all that stuff. But really, I think it's about those range Catan powers. You can't Overwatch with them. I think in a recent GT, somebody took a Tesseract Bolt with a load of Catans and a few Hex Marks and done pretty well. I don't know if they won or came placed. So it must be doing something. It must be decent. It must be decent. And God itchy knows, hay fever season yet again. But yeah, that's going to be an A tier option for me. The Tesseract Bolts. The Silent King, another one that's a talking point, you know, because I don't really use it enough, but it has since changed with the update. So it's a talking point. Assassination does happen on a model per model count, although the card says it's by unit. They did an update and they put it back to model. However, with the Necrons Codex update, the Triacal Menhirs do not have the character keyword. They specifically do not have the character keyword, and they do not share the Silent King's character keyword. So therefore, your opponent trying to score assassination can only do it on the Silent King, which is kind of cool because they've got to get through both Menhirs, get through our reanimation protocols, maybe the Technomancer's doing the Technomancer heal ability on them, maybe the Spider's got the Funo Pain save, the Reanimator's there maybe. There's all sorts of stuff that you can boost the Silent King to bring back the Menhirs. So assassination is going to be quite difficult for your opponent to score, which means he's more usable again, because that's the reason I wasn't taking him. I used to play, well, I mainly play against an opponent that plays fixed a lot, and as soon as you used to bring the Silent King, assassination. So it was a no-go area for me. Now it's good. The Annihilator beams from the Miniers are damage 6, lovely. Pretty much like a Locust Heavy Destroyer at that point. Strength 14, -4, 6 damage, but you are hitting on 2s. They do hit on 2s, but they've got heavy, so they've got to stay still. But very similar to two Locust Heavies, which would be 100 points worth. You've got the Scepter of Eternal Glory, which is 2 strength 10 shots at -3, 3 damage. So kind of similar to a Doomstalker's kind of attacks there. I mean, the Doomstalker's got a bit more strength, of course. Staff of Stars, you got 12 shots for the anti-infantry, indirect fire. Then in melee, 12 attacks for lethal hits, strength 8, -3, 2 damage. So he's doing everything at range in melee. He's also got the abilities to buff with his trike abilities. You normally go for the Fair of Stars to reroll hit rolls and rerolls of a 1 within 6 inches, and that will include himself. So all those weapons that you just rerolling once to hit and to wound on himself, nice. Fair of Blades is a good one to be able to reroll your charge roll and a +1 to the strength. That's good for Scorpion Destroyers because they're strength 7. To put them to strength 8, charge up against some toughness 4 Marines, bosh, you're wounded on 2s. That's good. I mean, you could add that further. With the Awakened Dynasty, you can use the Hungry Void stratagem to get them to strength 9. So that's cool. I don't really use the Bringer of Unity ability that often. It just ignores modifiers. I'm not a fan of that one. I've never really selected it that much. And then the Silent King's ability to be able to add 1 to the leadership for units within 6 as well, just in case you're getting problems with your Battle Shock. Now, he's 420 points. Is he worth 420 points? I'd argue maybe. It's still a maybe for me. Maybe some people are saying yes. You're getting your 2 Locust Heavy Destroyer shots in there. That's 100 points worth with the Annihilation Beams. You're getting a lot of weapons in there. But you're also getting something that we don't even discuss yet, the durability. I know we've discussed the Miniers, but just as an overall unit, it's 26 wounds, toughness 10, 2+ armor, 4+ invulnerable save. Yeah, that's much more difficult to kill than like a Locust Heavy unit, isn't it? So that might be where the extra value is with the 420 points, as well as the Fair of Stars ability. I think that is a massive one. The final unit within this A tier is the Transcendent Catan. I like this Catan Shard. I used to use this more than the Void Dragon. I just like his ability, but he's got Deep Strike. That's not the reason I like him, but he's got Deep Strike, 5+ Feel No Pain, halving damage, 4+ invulnerable save, like the other ones have. He's decent at range, he's decent in melee with D3 and D6 on the damage. But what I really like about him is the Trans-Dimensional Displacement ability. When you advance, you can basically re-Deep Strike. More than 9 inches away from enemy models. You cannot charge. That's the one thing. You can't charge because you've advanced. However, you can still shoot your Seismic Assault weapon because it's got Assault. So you can get him into a location, and that's really good for secondary scoring. That seems to be the way my playstyle is. I look for secondary scoring, engage on all fronts, behind enemy lines, positional things, not so much actions. Don't waste an action on the Catan. It's too expensive. 285 points, don't be doing action with it. Battery change, and we are back. We are in S tier now, start of S tier. I'm going to start this off with the Canoptic Scab Swarms. I know they've had some nerfs, they can't do actions unless they've got some OC. There are ways to give them OC. I still think they're going in almost everyone's list. They're only 40 points, and you can use them as anti-deep strike screens or just stand screens. Put them in ruins to stop infantry from charging through the ruin into your units, like your Locust Heavies and things like that. It's happened to me in the past. It's so annoying when you ain't got a screen there. They can blow up and regenerate with the reanimation protocols. And like I said, if there's a Cryptek or a Barge nearby, they get their OC so they can do actions. They're still useful for scoring other secondaries that are more positional. Engage on all fronts, for example, behind enemy lines, and so on. So they're not completely useless, but they're 40 points. You could compare them to Locust Destroyers, which is something I tend to forget about. You can take single Locust Destroyers for 30 points, but they are more visible, whereas the Scabs are quite flat, very hard to see them, and the Locusts are also mounted, so they can't go through ruins and things like that. So I would put the Scab Swarms still in S tier, even though they've had a slight nerf. Next in S tier, I know these have also had a nerf, but I'm going with the Canoptic Rave, so I still think this is probably the best unit we've got. In fact, no, there's one other unit I think is better. But I know they've been nerfed. They've got the points increased. They're 5 points ahead more than they used to be. The pistols can't do actions within engagement range anymore. I know all that. That's absolutely screwed up my game. I used to play fixed. I used to play cleanse. And 3 lots of Canoptic Wraiths, 18 Wraiths, cleanse, 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 easy peasy, easy peasy. You can't do that now. So my lists have been absolutely battered. So I started to take them out, put other things in. And I was finding that there's just simply no replacement for Wraiths. The nearest replacement is the Catan. All the different types of Catan, they're the nearest replacement. But they've not got the speed. The Transcendent does have the speed, which is why I kind of like the Transcendent a little bit. That has the speed, but can't charge after that crazy advanced thing. Nightbringer and Void Dragon don't necessarily have the speed. They also don't have the OC. The only Catan that has the decent OC is the Deceiver, which you're not really picking over the other ones. It's kind of hard to replace your Wraiths. You've got your durability with the Technomancer, with the 5+ Feel No Pain save, the 4+ Invuln save, the Technomancer's healing ability, reanimation protocols. They're just as resilient, if not more resilient, than the Catan. Anything that's got high damage, like damage 6, it just takes out one Wraith. And I mean, that's if you fail all those Feel No Pain saves. If they put all the damage onto a Catan, all the damage does go on it. Whereas when you've got models in a unit, it can't spill onto the next model and so on. So having 6 Wraiths and a Technomancer is pretty hard to shift. They've got the Wraith form ability to throw out mortal wounds, which doesn't happen every game for me, but when it does happen, it's quite nice. And they do a reasonable amount of damage. They're not massive, they're not doing Nightbringer damage. But their claws are doing okay, especially in the Canoptic Court if you're re-rolling everything. The Particle Casters are doing okay now. They're not really killing much, but they're doing enough. They're doing okay for what they are. They are beasts, so these things can go through ruins. They've got the Technomancer in the unit, so therefore you can get the infantry keyword shared across them. That means they can pop out of a monolith. And yeah, just toughness 6, 4+ invulnerable save, 4 wounds apiece, 6 models. It's 250 points for the 6 plus the Technomancer, which is 85. I know that's a lot, but you can't replace them. In my opinion, from what I've played, you just simply can't replace them. So they're in S tier for me still, even though they have been nerfed. Next, we've got a Chronomancer, one of the Cryptek models. When you play with your Immortals, or maybe Warriors, but mainly it's your Immortals, you will definitely have either a Chronomancer or a Plasmancer. Maybe at a push you might go for a Technomancer, but one of them will definitely be in the unit. It makes the unit so much better or so much more survivable, depending on what you want to do with the unit. You just don't, well, you wouldn't not put a Cryptek with Immortals. So I've put both the good ones, in fact I put all 3 in the S tier because they're all solid. They're all absolutely solid. I can't really split them apart. At first I had them in A tier, but it was someone in the council said to me, you know what, they're auto-includes, and they're right, they are. They really are. You will definitely choose one of them. So the Chronomancer's got the Invuln save, which is the only one that does. You've got the stealth ability, so it's -1 to hit them if he's with the unit. And then you've got the move, shoot, move ability, which is pretty cool. That can get you ducking into cover or get you further onto an objective. We said it earlier, if you add a Translocation Shrouded Overlord, you can auto-advance 6. Maybe it's your Tesla Immortal, so you're going to be advancing 6. You're then going to be moving 5, advancing 6, moving another 5 after shooting. Yeah. With Cosmic Precision, you could be doing all sorts of janky stuff with the Chronomancer, shooting, then moving after the 3-inch restriction, so you're stepping onto objectives. Chronomancers are good, and they're only 65 points. Damage output, nothing really there, to be honest with you. Iron Stave is crap, but 65 points for all the other stuff is fantastic. Next we come on to probably I would say this is the best unit in the entire Codex. In the entire Necrons faction, this is the best unit, the Hexmark Destroyer. Hands down for me, wins me almost every game I play that I win. It's because of the Hexmark Destroyers. They get me so many points. Lone Operative is huge, and we don't have many apart from, we've got Illuminazares, and he's 175, whereas the Hexmark is just 70 points. 105 points less than Illuminazares. Lone Op with Deep Strike. Illuminazares ain't got Deep Strike. With the Hypocrite Legion, he is absolutely magic. You pop him down, bring him up, you know the drill. That's the way I play. You've got a free Overwatch, and it hits on 2s if you want to do that. Isn't going to kill everything, but it's just extra shots. Anything that's shot within 3 inches, you get to shoot as well. The pistols are okay anyway. I mean, 18 inches isn't bad. We used to have precision on them. It's now ignores cover. I think ignores cover is actually better. When it first changed, I was like, damn, I really liked precision. I think it's because just as it changed, I killed an apothecary that deep struck near me with a unit of, I don't know what they were with. It came in and I killed this apothecary and I was like, haha, precision. And then it changed to ignores cover and I was really annoyed. But really, there's so much cover in the game and there's not many chances where you're going to use precision, so especially at 18-inch range. So I actually prefer ignores cover. Pistols work in engagement range, but you can only be shot within 12, which is cool. So you can only be shot because of low up within 12. If they get within 12, you're going to Overwatch for free. 70 points. The reason though why it's the best unit in the game or in the faction rather, is simply because of the secondary scoring. If you play fixed, like sometimes I do now, sometimes I mix it up. If I'm going behind enemy lines and establish locust, he scores 7 points on his own per turn. That's per turn on his own. If you've got two of them next to each other, that's 8 points. And they've got to be shifted, otherwise it's 8 points every turn unless you deal with them. And if I'm playing Hypercrypt, which I am, if you start to get near them, I will collect them and put them somewhere else. And I'll keep doing it all game. And because of the Hypercrypt rules, you can actually deploy them. So I don't actually put them in reserves, I deploy them. Make sure they're safe. And if I go second, happy days, because I can pick them up at the end of my opponent's turn 1 and put them down in turn 1. Sometimes I'll throw them away and I'll use Cosmic Precision and dump them in, score my 7 points with 1. They'll get killed because I've put them within 4 inches away or whatever it is. They'll get killed, but they've scored me 7 points. I've got more in the bank. I've got another hex mark or 2 left over. But yeah, they just score me. Virtually all my points is done by them. It's done by them. So yeah, that is another S tier option, Hexmark Destroyer. We're then going into a battle line unit, the Immortals. The Immortals are fantastic for what they do. You take them in 10s, you put a Cryptek in there. If you want an Overlord or a Royal Warden, optional. You don't have to. That's just more expense, but you definitely put a Cryptek. If you want to go offensive and very aggressive, you go for the Plasmancer, 5+ critical hit rolls. If you want to go a little bit more defensive or a little bit more into the secondary scoring with the advancing and stuff, or the movement with the Chronomancer, you go for the Chronomancer. Or you can go for the Technomancer, which is super duper because that's a 5+ feel no pain save. I tend to have them with my 3 units of Wraith, so I don't fit them in. But you have one or the other with the Immortals. The Immortals have got very decent weapons. There's a lot of tricks you can do to get them to reroll hit rolls. I mean, the Awakened Dynasty, you're hitting on 2s anyway. You've got the Conquering Tyrant stratagem. You've got the Arisen Tyrant with the enhancement in another detachment. I believe that's the Hypercrypt. As soon as you enter the battlefield, you're rerolling everything. The Obeisance Phalanx has got a way to reroll hits. There's loads of ways to reroll hits or a +1 to hit. They already reroll 1s to wound or all the wound rolls if the enemy unit's on an objective. So a lot of the time you're just rerolling everything. Hits, wounds, whatever. They're just nice. Lethal hits or sustained hits, either way is good. I think I prefer the sustained hits too, to be honest with you, but maybe that's just the opponents I come up against. It seems to work better for me. But yeah, Immortals are good. And another thing to note, battle line units are very important nowadays with this Pariah Nexus deck. Some of the cards relate to battle line units in terms of actions. Also the secret missions, which people are still not quite understanding the importance of them. It's not like Gambits where you just forget about them. They are massive. I think I've won my last 2 games by using secret missions. They're huge. And one of them in particular is relating to battle line units. So you need battle line units. And if your opponent chooses that objective with battle line units, they've got to clear all your battle line units. If you've not got Immortals or ain't got any warriors, then well, it's gonna make it much easier for them to score that secret mission. So that makes them an S tier comfortably. Next we've got Locust Destroyers. There's lots of different uses for these guys. If you put them in a unit of 6 with a Locust Lord, they're deadly. Lethal hits, only strength 5, -2 AP, 2 damage. They reroll 1s against the nearest enemy unit. And if they're on an objective, you're re-rolling all the stuff. I think there's been an FAQ of that. I need to reread that. There's something that has been nerfed slightly in there. I think you need to have both of the boxes ticked to be able to re-roll all the hit rolls. They can do damage to infantry, whether it's light infantry, intercessor kind of infantry, but even the bigger stuff, they do well because of lethal hits with 18 shots with a large unit. Lethal hits in there. The Locust Lord provides 5+ critical hit rolls. They do work. And they're not that expensive. 180 points for 6 plus the Locust Lord for 80, so 260 points for the max unit. They're moving 8 inches. They're toughness 6 as well. 3 wounds apiece. So 2 damage weapons struggle because it needs 2 dice to go through just to kill 1, which would normally kill a 4 wound model. Also, you can use these in a different way. You can take them in singles. 1 single Locust Heavy Destroyer for 30 points. That's the cheapest unit we've got in our codex. Cheaper than a Scarab unit, cheaper than a Royal Warden. You take one of these, very similar use to Scarabs. Use it as an anti-deep strike. Use it as an action hero. Okay, it's not got the invulnerable save like a Locust Lord would, but you're paying 30 points. You're not paying 80 points. So you could afford to take 3 individual Locust Destroyers to do that kind of stuff. And that's 3 lots of toughness 6 with 3 wounds each. So it depends how you look at it. I think it's a decent option either way you play. I quite like them as a big large unit that just goes around shooting stuff. Sticking to the Locust stuff, we've got the Locust Heavies. I like the Locust Heavies, and I like both variants. Both variants are very strong this edition. You're pretty much always re-rolling wound rolls against the desired target. That's what it probably should say. With the big gun, you're re-rolling ones against monster vehicles, and against the small with the small gun, you're re-rolling ones against non-monster vehicles. The small gun, you're getting a lot of shots with a 3-man unit because you've got rapid fire 6, sustain hits 1. So you've got 6 shots a man, 12 in rapid fire, times it by the 3 men in the unit, that's 36 shots. If you've got critical hits on a 5+ with the Locust Lord, that's 42 hits. Not dice, hits. Because you're going to be with the heavy keyword, or maybe you're in the Awakened Dynasty with a +1. But you can get to 42 hits on average. Strength 6 -1, 1 damage. That's doing work on a lot of stuff. The small stuff gets absolutely munched. All the guardsmen, munched, not a problem. Space Marines, not a problem, munched. Even though it's 1 damage, only -1 AP, the sheer amount of shots. Remember, you're re-rolling ones to wound with those 42 hits. And you're wounded on 3s. It just goes through anything. The bigger stuff, it's going to do a decent amount. It's going to do a decent amount of damage. But that's where you sort of look at the Gorse Disruptor, the bigger weapon, which is strength 14, -4, and just a flat 6 damage. The amount of times I've told my opponent about the damage of this thing and their eyes have popped out going, what? You just done 18 damage on me? I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. These are 6 damage a piece. And they've got heavy and they've got lethal. Strength 14, they're good. Probably our best anti-tank option we've got, at range at least. And they're cheap, 50 points a model. Take 3 units to 3, 450 points. That's nasty. That can be nasty. I wouldn't put a Locust Lord in with the Gorse Destructors though. You don't need critical hits for lethal hits on 3 shots. You don't need to do it. Especially at strength 14. You don't need to do it. And re-rolling ones. You don't need it. So only for the Exterminators you would need a Locust Lord, in my opinion. Talking about the Locust Lord, he's actually next in this tier group. I've put him in S simply because, well, the 2 units we've just previously done, the Locust Destroyers and the Locust Heavy Destroyers, critical hits on a 5+ is massive. It is huge. But also you can take him on his own. You take him on his own, you can have a 5+ feel no pain save with his amulet, Nano Scarab amulet, and run him solo. Run him solo, have another action hero with an invulnerable save and a feel no pain save. A nice beat stick action hero with the Lord's Blade, which is strength 8, -3, 2 damage. He's also doing extra work with the Driven by Hatred ability. I always forget what this one is. It's if they're below half strength, you get to reroll hits and wounds. I seem to forget that one, but it's an extra bit there. But if you take him with those units of Locust Heavies or Locust Destroyers, you could just take the Resurrection Orb, which is another way to boost that unit when you add the reanimation protocols from the command phase, and then the Resurrection Orb in your opponent's turn, or whenever really. Yeah, he's an S tier for me. And of course the enhancements, don't forget, enhancements are huge. Onto the Cryptex, we've got a couple in a row here. We've got the Plasmancer, 5+ critical hit rolls, again very similar to the Locust Lord. With your Immortals, with your sustain hits 2 on 5+, or with your Gorse Blasters that are lethal hits on 5s are lethal hits. But what I like to do is I like to use the enhancement where you get to reroll hit rolls. So you would just pick up the dice that isn't a 5+ and roll it again and go fish for the lethal hits. He's also doing mortal wounds within 18 inches. I normally just get 2 mortal wounds off with that, but it's really handy when you've got something down to a couple wounds left. A lot of the time for me it's a soul grinder. I've knocked it down and it's got 2 wounds remaining and I go, aha! I've got a Plasmancer that can do 4 dice and any 4+s are a mortal wound and I get 2. It's dead. Love it. The amount of times that happens is unreal. His weapons are pretty decent, you know, for a 65 point model. The Plasmic Lance is actually good. Strength 7 with 2 damage and -3 AP as well. It's not bad. And yeah, you stick this guy with the mortals, make them very aggressive. Bang, bang, bang. 65 points. Dirt cheap. Stick an enhancement on. Boost the unit. The other Cryptek I want to mention is the Technomancer, another S tier unit. 5+ feel no pain save for your Wraiths or Immortals or Warriors. I tend to do the Wraiths. I think most people that take Wraiths will put the Technomancer with the Wraiths. If you don't, you're doing it wrong. 4+ invuln with the 5+ feel no pain save and you're healing with the Technomancer ability. You can't leave that behind. Such a good combination of synergy. At range and in melee, he's doing absolutely naffle. He's doing nothing. You could take an enhancement, I guess, but other than the feel no pain, doesn't bring much else to the table. So yeah, Technomancer. And then the final unit I've got for the S tier, I was debating putting this down to A tier. So it's sort of the lower end of S tier, maybe upper A tier. Depends how you want to look at it. It's the Tomb Blades. Tomb Blades, lots of different weapon options. They're quick as heck, 12 inches of movement. They've got Scout 9 inches as well. So first turn, if you go first, you're moving 21 inches, which is nice. And a lot of the map types in the Pariah Nexus deck, 4 out of 6 of them, the No Man's Land is only 20 inches or less away. So you can actually start doing certain secondaries turn 1, behind enemy lines, establish locust. If you're lucky, terrain features may get in the way, screening of units may get in the way, but they're going to have stealth because you always pick the Shadow Loom. You don't really pick the Shield Veins, you don't really pick the Nebula Scope, you pick the Shadow Loom for stealth. And yeah, weapon-wise, they've got options, haven't they? I quite like what do I like at the moment? Because I use them for actions, I don't really look at the weapons that often, but the Particle Beamer for devastating wounds is always okay for D6 attacks per model. If not, you probably just go with the Ghost Blaster. Or the Twin Tesla Carbine. They're all okay. They're all okay, really. But what I also like about these guys is that they move after shooting. So if you shoot, you get to move an extra 6 inches after that. So they get to where they want to go pretty rapid, which is why they're sort of A/S tier for me. Because I play the Hypercrypt Legion mostly, but when I'm not playing the Hypercrypt Legion, and maybe I'm playing the Awakened Dynasty, you've not got that flexibility of movement. Maybe you've not got a monolith, and you're obviously not picking up units and putting them down again like Hexmark Destroyers. So that's where Tomb Blades become quite useful. They have been nerfed recently with the assault keyword. They can't advance and do an action, but that's going to nerf all units in the game. And the fact that this is still moving 12 inches means they're still useful. So that's my S tier all lined up, and in fact that's all the tier groups done. Any disagreements, put them down in the comments down below. Just remember, it's personal playstyle, personal opinion. There's no right, there's no wrong. No one needs to argue with anyone else. But yeah, put it down in the comments down below. If you think any are wildly incorrect, we'll have a conversation about it. And yeah, guys, if you haven't already, subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.